Have you ever thought about the evolution of opening credits? Probably not, but I have because I guess that's what I do with my life, and because I think it's quite interesting. If we start with TV opening credits rather than films, their function is simple. They're there to kind of set the mood for the show because you've just watched a bunch of adverts and now you've got an opening sequence that tells you this isn't an advert anymore, this is the show starting, so settle down and pay attention. It's also designed to be memorable in some way because TV shows are serialised and they want you to tune in next time. If this was a show you happened to find just by channel flicking and you didn't know what it was before, then a title sequence with a catchy theme will help you remember and maybe convince you to come back to the show next time. And building on that, it also makes it more familiar to you. Music is particularly important for this because you get to know the theme song, and the more familiar it all feels, the more comfortable, the more likely you'll be able to sit down and watch it next time it's on because this feels nice and cozy and familiar to me. And obviously then as well it has the function of crediting the main actors and director and whoever else, but I don't think I needed to point that one out. Anyway, these are all pretty clear functions TV shows adhered to exactly in the early years, like a checklist. Catchy theme you'll remember? Check. Cozy feel? Check. Crediting the actors? Here's some freeze frames of their faces next to their names? Check. Opening credits normally lasted 30 seconds or so, and they did their job to a T. And then people got more creative with opening credits. They became more like artistic music videos where crediting the actors is still a name, but it's less of a name. They stopped using freeze frames and just flashed several names on screen at a time. Instead, the primary function seemed to become the expression, to express something just as meaningful or artistic in the credits as you might want to in the actual show. In that sense, the credits became something in and of themselves. Sometimes that's a point on the emotional effect terrorism can have on a culture and the sense of paranoia about the safety of Homeland. Maybe it's to familiarise you with the philosophical ideas of a fantasy world, such as the theories on dust and the other worlds in his Dark Materials. Band of Brothers reconnects us to the fact these characters we're following were real people whose photos we could flick back through as though they were found in our granddad's attic. Agatha Christie's And Then They Were None conveys an idea of human beings reduced to nothing but chess pieces for the sake of a psychopathic murder game, and in the example of Avatar, it's a useful way to slot in exposition early so it won't have to slow the story down later. And Game of Thrones, not only are you introduced to the world map, but the way lots of clockwork mechanisms pull it all together conveys a sense of history unravelling before your eyes like clockwork, that time passes and things change as swift and seamlessly as mechanics, that the traumatic and bloody experiences of real people get reduced down to cold, sweeping glance of history's eye. Suddenly what tended to be 30-second credits became 60 or 90 seconds so that something more artistic could properly express itself. And obviously I'm talking generalisations. You can find lots of examples of artistic opening credits early on, such as Dad's Army from the late 60s, that both conveyed the patriotic blitz spirit feel of Britain whilst also half ridiculing it and ridiculing British incompetence at the same time. On the whole though, for the most, TV opening credits have gotten more artistic with time, though we can question what happens to them going forwards into the future now. Will opening credits become completely redundant as TV moves away from the typical broadcasting in place of services like Netflix, Amazon, and that other one that owns half the world? With binge watching shows increasingly becoming the norm, opening credits increasingly become a distraction. You know, how many times do you want to sit through the theme song if you're going to binge watch from episode to episode? At what point do you want to skip them? And more so, they have less of a need to try and familiarise you with the show or to divide the space between the show starting and the adverts before it, because there aren't any adverts on Netflix. And even crediting the actors themselves, is that necessary nowadays when all anyone has to do is just pop over to the IMDb site or app and just have a search? I mean, I would argue, yes, it is still necessary, but some people might disagree. For this, perhaps opening credits will go the way of shows like Breaking Bad did, in that they get very short and very concise. Or maybe they'll go the way of film opening credits, which is to disappear entirely. Because very few films anymore start with opening credits. They might flash up a name of the producers or director or company or something, but rarely proper credits with their own sequence. Instead, films just seem to start now, eager to hook us in with something dramatic or mysterious from the very beginning. I think it's unsurprising films lost their opening credits because they were never as necessary to begin with. You know, films were made for the big screens where, Although there are some adverts before, no one is really messing about in the kitchen, making something, waiting to hear the theme tune before rushing back kind of thing. Everyone is sitting and waiting for the most. Plus, you've all already paid specifically to go and see this film, so there's no need to try and familiarise you with a memorable tune so that you come back for a next episode or whatever. Plus, cinema is designed to feel big and dramatic and exciting. An opening credits sequence could get in the way of that sense of spectacle. So instead, credits mostly come at the end of films. Normally people leave during the end credits unless they've got the feeling that there might be some teaser or extra twist added after the credits, or, you know, if the credits are artistically good enough that you find yourself wanting to stay and enjoy them, but perhaps they're fighting a losing battle there. And if TV does go the way of film and just move all the credits to the end, they'll never likely get seen, no matter how interesting the credits sequence is, because on TV there's some announcer talking over the credits to annoy you and tell you what's up next.
That is the great sin for which our punishment is having the matiness of local radio crash in on the end of The Nazis: A Warning from History to tell us that mass murder season continues next with a look at Stalin's wackiest purges.
Or if it's Netflix, the film has minimised and given only 15 seconds before the next episode plays. So that's probably true in my opinion. However, I don't think they'll ever die out completely. You know, some films still do use opening credits despite them no longer being a necessity, which suggests their reasons for using them are more creative than practical ones. And this is important because I've said about some of the expression you can do, but there's one other solid function that credits can provide, particularly for a film. They can give it a neat, concluding feel of a cycle coming to its end. The Breakfast Club is an old film with not the most creative credits, but it's a simple example to demonstrate this point, because the film opens with credits and the characters entering the school and the Simple Minds song plays, and then the film ends with the characters leaving the school and the song plays again. It conveys to us a sense of a cycle being completed. The story has had its arc, which has reached its conclusion. You know, we go away feeling more fulfilled and with a sense of closure as a result. And since films are very much standalone pieces, even if there are sequels, that films need their own emotional arcs much more than individual TV episodes do. That cyclical feeling can be pretty important, and a lot can be done with it. It can even be used to hide a lot of subtle clues in the opening credits that will come together in the end credits, such as the 2006 film The Fall. Without spoiling anything, the film begins black and white with Beethoven's 7th Symphony playing alongside slow motion shots that you completely overlook at first because, you know, this is just the credits, you're not paying too much attention, you don't know why there's a train on a bridge and a horse being hoisted into the air, you don't know who any of these people are, but you don't question it too much because in your minds the film is yet to really start. And yet everything you could possibly need to know about this film is hidden away in the opening sequence. Some of it being important plot points that I'm not going to spoil, but also in a general sense. You know, the images that we see at the end of the film are a montage of crazy stunts that were performed throughout the early years of cinema, and seeing that, suddenly the opening sequence makes sense now as a film set preparing a stunt, where a train's set up and a horse is hoisted for him to jump onto and all that kind of thing. And so the opening credits show us the preparation, and then the ending shows us the completion of stunts. That nice cyclical feeling. And it also ties together the emotional shift that takes place throughout most of the film as we see the opening from the perspective of the protagonist Roy, who is a cynical stunt man and who would see a stunt just as the bare bones constructing it, but the end shows us stunts more from the perspective of the other protagonist, Alexandria, an excitable, optimistic child who sees the stunts with the same sense of spectacle and awe with which she views all life. And so, where emotionally the film has pit Roy's cynicism against Alexandria's optimism, it's hers that wins out, and consequently, hers we see through the ending. I know I've been a bit vague there because I don't want to spoil the film, even though I've already done a video essay on it, but I think you get what I mean. The purpose of opening credits is changing. Without such a practical need, we've seen them move away from practicality towards creativity. Either they'll continue to be used to express something specific that adds to the art, and they'll be used to tell the audience something through a sequence that's more removed from the plot and therefore able to be more abstract and less narrative. Either that, or we'll see them die away completely. And that's no great loss to feel sad about. It's just interesting to note the change. And if you found this interesting, let me know in the comments. You know, I've half considered doing a follow-up video to this where I just quickly analyse like 10 or 20 opening credit sequences from stuff in rapid succession. So let me know if that interests you. Like the video if that interests you. Subscribe if you're new. Support me on Patreon if you fancy a little extra. And otherwise, hopefully see you next time.